So here's like the crazy thing. Okay, they've got this Permian Basin conference in San Antonio on Tuesday, and nobody's dealt with San Antonio. Like what happened in 2017 or whatever was going on otherwise in San Antonio. And nobody's dealt with the Permian Basin since like, I don't even know, since like the 80s, right? Nobody's dealt with how gross that is and all that crap. And you know what else nobody's dealt with is the Panama Papers. Remember when the Panama Papers came out? You know, one of the crazy things about the Panama Papers is they said the Panama Papers came out, but that the actual hack of that firm had happened, you know, it would have been around this time 5 years ago. Really? Yeah. And what was going on with the Panama Papers? Remember all of those news articles that were about how these guys in other countries, these like high level guys in other countries were responsible for serious crime. And it was like all these connections, you know, like child like they were doing charities through their children to launder money, and it was like these oligarchs that like had personal connections with Putin himself. And what did they have in the United States? Does anybody remember the articles that came out originally about the Panama Papers? It's Putin and oligarchs and Azerbaijan and like laundering through accounts, you know, set up for nonprofits with their children. What did they have in the United States? Medicare fraud. Absolutely crazy, right? The big scandal in the United States related to whatever was released in the Panama Papers had to do with Medicare fraud. Do you have any idea what Medicare fraud is actually about? Especially when you're talking about medical devices? Did anybody look at things like, I don't know, the exclusions databases connected to who actually got busted for Medicare fraud in the United States? See, there's this thing going on right now where the Department of Justice has this press release dated for September 21st, you know, 10 days after September 11th. But I mean, that's just one thing. U.S. taxpayer in Panama Papers investigation sentenced to prison. U.S. taxpayer. You don't think this would have anything to do with concepts of how you could use tax evasion and Medicare fraud for something that would qualify at the level of oligarchs and Putin, having children of heads of state with charities that launder money in efforts to defraud the government the father's supposed to represent? Well, here's the other thing. Today's the 27th. Does anybody know what happened 101 years ago today? Anybody? I'll tell you what it has to do with Panama. And not only does it have to do with Panama, but it has to do with healthcare connected to the construction of the Panama Canal. Was that not what you were expecting? Did you want something sexy and exotic like the Ottoman Empire? Did you want something really scandalous and terrifying like biological weapons? Well, the thing is, if that's what you got, it had to be matched by something else. And the whole point of a bond, especially a bond after a war, that's supposed to be about reconstruction, is that you're supposed to do something about reconstruction. And so if there's fraud involving people that are bondholders, then you're going to have to deal with the fact that the people who are expecting to be availed of the advantages of the bond coming due are going to have to be matched by people who had the bond for a while to work, doing their part. What we got here is one Department of Justice notice about some guy with a Dutch sounding name and tax fraud. How many, let's see, we didn't do our part. We haven't had any bust for Medicare fraud. Not only have we not had any bust for Medicare fraud, but I was just a couple of months ago listening to this nurse who used to be in the army talk about watching them strategically murder people with ventilators to the tune of charging Medicare $39,000 a person. We didn't honor the bond, guys. America completely screwed up the Liberty Bond issues. Do you know that? I watched it. I watched what you did in Houston with that church. It's a little kind of different Christian, isn't it? But right before they got to do the capital improvement in their fixed asset, in order to be able to avail themselves of their maturity on the Liberty Bond, you had to brand it with Black Ops. Okay, so you're working Black Ops now. But even if you're working Black Ops and that's supposed to be your contribution, you still got to honor your part of the bond. And you didn't. Now, the problem is that the Ottoman Empire was defined in a particular manner. And even if you thought you were going to throw in, because you had some of that imperial legacy and you wanted a part of it, you defaulted. You defaulted. Do you know what happened after that? Did you really think for 100 years you would hustle people, and when it came time to come due, you would take people like me and what, make us a special bonus for the holdouts? Well, you still gotta pay your way. If I don't hear by midnight tonight from anybody, you guys didn't pay your fucking way. And you wasted my entire life with this bond scam. I don't got one bust for Medicare fraud. Do you understand? You didn't give me one bust for Medicare fraud in 5 years. You know what you wanted? Education. And I'm the one who wrote it, and I'm the one that wouldn't let you publish it. It's not a real bond. It's bond fraud.